Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to Gift of Healing TV. I'm Sara Jane, and I am delighted for this program to be joined by Laura Ballerini. Laura, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Now, Laura's going to be sharing with us the transformative power of creativity. Become a perspective shifter and rise above life's challenges. I think we all need a little bit of help with that one. But first, let me introduce Laura more fully. Laura Ballerini is a seasoned artist who has been running a design boutique for 26 plus years and designs with words as well as imagery. With over 40 years in the design industry as a whole, Laura sees the influence that art and design have in our daily lives. Through her unique creative lens, she shares personal stories that illustrate the countless ways art and design affect all of us. Laura has a degree in visual communications from the Alberta University of the Arts and is a recipient of numerous awards throughout her career, including a Webby and a Summit Award. Her passion for continuous learning includes regular creative initiatives, feeding her intrigue of art and design that began as a very young child. While she's a quiet and introverted creative, Laura has recently found her inner badass and radiates her quietly fierce disposition in her work and her life. Laura, thank you so very much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to learning more of this from you. Please share a little about yourself and why this particular topic.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a thrill to be here. So I've been a designer for many decades, and I have found more and more as I get older that art and design are weaved into everything we do. Everything, into how we talk, how we dress, how we cook, how our relationships are with other people. So it's really become evident to me how integral and important art and design are in everyday life. And, I know we're going to talk a little bit about perspective shifting, but just looking at things differently. And as an artist, as a designer, I'm a visual person, but as I'm getting older, I'm finding that it's deeper. It's not just visual, it's what we're listening to and what we're feeling and tapping into all that. And I find that is, it's just critical that we're really cognizant of not just the visual as a designer, but all the things that help build that creative sense of who we are.
And a little bit about you. There's got to be an aspect of your story that actually led you to go this route.
Yeah, to be an artist, to be a designer. As a child, I was the shy, quiet one. In fact, some people thought we had 4 kids in our family. Some people thought there was only 3. They didn't even know that I was around. So I was so quiet and shy. But I found I expressed myself through art. I always did, even as a little girl. And I was the shy, quiet one that just loved creating. I loved Barbie doll clothes. I loved drawing. I loved painting. My family was pretty athletic. I was athletic up to a certain point, but I found art gave me joy, and it was a quiet joy. And I don't know if, just as a child, I found that there was something with the visual, using pencil crayons and paints. And, my mom was Ukrainian. She taught us how to make Ukrainian Easter eggs as children. It was like, wow, it's so interesting to think in different ways. And if you know anything about Ukrainian Easter eggs, it's actually designing the negative part of it. You're using wax to block out colors. So you're actually designing with hot wax to block out color as you design. So I found all those different crafts and different types of art help me think in a different way. when I went to art college, speaking of that, we actually had an instructor who we would do still lifes, right, in art college. And what he would do was he would shut off all the lights in the room, put the spotlight on the still life, give us well, we'd have to fill our paper with graphite, like cover it with pencil, and we had to draw with our erasers. So we were thinking in the opposite way. We were actually erasing where the light was hitting the still life. So for me, I have found when I look back, it's like, wow, that makes us creative thinkers. That, and not just in art and design, but in problem solving. So now, like I say, as I've gotten older, I'm kind of drawing on all those things as I learned as a child, going, okay, this really helped me be a good problem solver today and with my clients and with my work, because I've learned all those skills that are, maybe a little bit different from throwing a ball, or, which, don't get me wrong, being athletic and being in sports is also a very creative teamwork activity. But for me, it was art and design and problem solving through different mediums and thinking in a different way.
And it's so important for us to get back to our creativity, isn't it? Because I'd say too many of us have almost sort of, it's encouraged out of us rather than encouraged to stay within us and for us to be able to use it. Because children are naturally creative.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They love to colour, to draw, whether they're good at it, but they're a child, for crying out loud, sort of, it's so important. And creativity can change so much in our lives, can't it? Well, it's creative thinking to a great degree.
Absolutely. And that's where I find, when I talk about perspective shifting, one of the exercises I talk about is maybe we don't write down our ideas. Maybe we draw our ideas. Let's draw it in a sketchbook. Let's see if we think about it differently. And I do believe when we start thinking differently in different ways with different mediums, that's where innovation is. And I'm not talking as an artist. I've run my own company. I've had to make a living out of being a designer. So obviously I have to have a sense of business of, what's the profit here? What's the target audience? Who are we speaking to? What are the, the products and services? So I've had to take my design sense and apply it to a world of business so that I am representing brands in the best possible way. And I'm using those brands and those color fonts. Those are very emotional things. And brand is a big word these days. Everybody is talking about brand, but it really is about creating a feeling and creating a sense of, is this trustworthy? Can I trust this company? Can I believe that these products are going to be good? So it's building creativity from the ground up, not just from colors and fonts, but from trust and credibility and, how you treat your clients after a sale. So creativity is built into all those different aspects. It's not being an artist and a designer. It's wrapping everything up in a bow, so to speak, with strong visuals, but also marrying it with important words that really speak to the client, the audience, the art gallery, wherever you're being creative. So creativity touches us in every facet of life. My husband's a car guy. He would balk if I said he was creative, but I see him working on his vehicles and he's thinking and he's coming up with solutions and, using his tools to come up and solve problems in that engine. And it's like, you're creative and you don't realize how creative you are. So it's everywhere, and it's important, and it's important we recognize it, because it is bringing innovation to this world and helping us sort out even feelings, right? It's innovative thought, but also innovative spirit. And I think that is what we need to develop.
You were mentioning sort of color, and it was just like, we live in, to a certain degree, such a black and white world, but we don't if you look at nature.
Yes. There's so many shades of gray, and that's good. To go back to my husband, he's a black and white guy, and he'll read the paper and go, oh, this is happening, taxes and government and politics and war. But it's not black and white. There's so many shades of gray. And that's where I try to kind of instill like some thought into, well, it's not actually this way. Let's think about it from this perspective. So it's not black and white. Nothing is black and white. There's so many shades of gray, and I try to recognize those shades of gray and kind of pull that out. Like I say, in problem solving, in conflict, in so many different ways, it's critical. Things are not black and white.
I just think about children, young children, and because they don't have a full understanding of life. If a parent says to them, we're going to do this, it's black and white. We do it or we don't do it. I'm happy or I'm let down, because there is no middle ground. And as we grow older, it's learning about circumstances outside of people's control. So life isn't black and white. It is those shades of grey, as you say. But isn't it about actually putting those splashes of colour into our life? And is that the shift of perspective, really? Is that bringing something, a new dimension to things that maybe we hadn't thought about before?
Yes, I agree. And sometimes it's of course bringing that new dimension, but it's also realizing what's there, what's right in front of us. And, I wrote a book on art and design and everyday life and inspiration. And one of the stories I write about my granddaughter. So she's 6 now, but during COVID, she was a little girl. She was just a toddler. And I wrote a story about her helping me find color again. COVID, the world was gray and it was dismal and it was scary. And I would take her to the park and she would point out like the green in the trees and, the red robins, and the sky was blue. And it was like, it was simple. She would just point. And it was like, I forgot to look at the trees and how beautiful they are against the beautiful, clear blue sky, So it's like a child, for me, instilled that sense of hope again in color. And I started seeing color and hope. And, we're going to get through this. And so it's funny that the wisdom of a child is very pure. And I think we need to tap into that as well, because we can be as innovative and as intelligent and as savvy as we get. But sometimes we have to tap into that, I don't want to say inner child, but actually just visualize a child and how they're thinking and how they're solving problems, because in many ways, that's where it all begins.
And inner child is something I very, very strongly believe in. And it's our child is still there inside of us.
Yes.
Hoping, wishing, wanting to come out.
Yes.
And that's our creativity. That creativity still exists within us.
Mm-hmm.
A child doesn't think, does this color go with that color? It's just any more than nature does.
Exactly.
And then what happens? A human comes along and says, "Oh, you can't. No, you can't put those two colors together." Yeah, look in nature. Yes.
Exactly. In fact, when I went to art college, I had this great painter. I didn't specialize in painting. I specialized in visual communications, which was advertising basically. But he was a painter, and he was a great painter because he said, you grow up and you go to art college and you learn all the rules. You learn opposite colors and what's complementary and all that, different hues, all that stuff. And he goes, I'm aspiring to paint again as a child. And he watched his own children and he'd give them paints, and he would love just that freedom and that, he threw all the rules away. Like, there's so many rules about art and creativity and design and in every aspect of life. And he just threw it away and goes, I aspire to paint like a child again. And that's what he did. It's amazing.
And I think that at so much in life, it's by all means, learn the rules, then you know what you can throw away.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not one of these people that likes to follow rules. I do things my way. Yes. And they may take longer to work, but it resonates with me. It feels right for me. It's authentic for me.
Yes.
And actually, sometimes, a lot of the time, the answers we're seeking are outside that box, that rule book. The answer's just get rid of the box, get rid of all the stuff that's getting in the way of us tapping into that creativity, which I'm guessing is part of the become a perspective shifter to help you to rise above life's challenges.
Exactly. Yes, and that's, for me, that was presented to me about 4 years ago when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And up to that point, I've had a very blessed life. I had never really been challenged. Health was, I just kind of took it for granted. And all of a sudden I was faced with this, kind of obviously life-changing disease. And, I could have felt sorry for myself and cried and all that, but I looked at my husband who was devastated. I had to be strong for him because he was very devastated. But it made me shift perspective in that, okay, I need to lose weight. I need to eat better. I need to actually change how I think. I was kind of myself. I would get down and out and have a lot of self-doubt. And it was like, I need to actually create joy for myself and find the joy within my life. So yeah, it's diet, exercise, and food. Well, that's part of diet, but it was also mindset. How do I take this diagnosis? And yeah, I'm going to get the surgery. I'm going to get the chemo. I'm going to get the radiation. But how do I change? So it was like you get this life-changing challenge. And instead of just taking it for what it is, it's like, okay, what can I do? I had to take control in my own way of how can I make this work for me? Because obviously there's kind of a sequence of events you have to go through the medical system. But for me, how can I change? How can I, react to the situation and make it better for me going forward? So that's where I kind of had a perspective shifting moment, and everything started getting clear. And I actually worked with a marketing coach about that time, probably before my diagnosis, and I had written this book about inspiration. And she goes, Laura, you're a perspective shifter. So she inspired me to tap into that. So when I was diagnosed, it was like, okay, this is where perspective shifting is actually happening and taking place. And I found I use it now in my everyday life when I'm challenged, or if I see someone challenged, I try to use that and tap into that perspective shifting. And things aren't always as they seem. And it's not, the old saying, it's not, the challenge that you're faced with, it's how you deal with that challenge. And for me, that's where the perspective shift really kicks in.
I think there can be some very simple things in life. And it's like getting stuck in a traffic jam. You can either get really stressy about it, or it's, okay, there's nothing I can do. Yeah. So just whatever, and you're in a hurry when you're driving somewhere and the lights go red. And I always look at it and I think, okay, one of three things is happening here. Somebody requires it more than I do to have that green light.
Yeah.
They're clearing the road in front of me, or they're keeping me off that piece of road to keep me safe.
Yes.
Rather than, what are they doing this to me for? Why do they? Every time a light stays green, I say, thank you very much. And if it goes to red, it's just like, okay, fine. It may sound very simple. It may sound silly to some people, but I don't get into that stressed state.
Yes.
And I haven't actually done for quite a lot of years. Sort of getting stuck in traffic, sort of trying to drive down to my mum's in Devon, sort of, and finding I can't get 2 hours late, because I'm stuck.
Yes.
Because there's been I think it was a horse box that overturned on the motorway. That stops everything.
Yeah.
And everything else around it, if you try to get off, is jammed up, and it's like,
yes.
And you just have to get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
And by getting stressed, it makes it feel longer. by saying, okay, can you do anything about it? Yeah. No. Then what is the point of getting stressed? So I'm sure you've got some little, because I know that's only something tiny, but it can make a massive difference.
Yes, and actually that's a big deal because that can happen several times a day, right? And my husband is notorious for getting so frustrated in traffic. But I learned a lesson a long time ago. I belong to Weight Watchers, and I've always had struggled with my weight, and had joined Weight Watchers, and I had this fantastic leader, and she told the story of she picked up her sister at the airport. She was coming in from Toronto or something. She picked her up from the airport, and she was frantic. The instructor was frantic to get her back home or something, and they were in rush hour traffic. The traffic was crazy, and people were cutting her off, and every time a driver would cut her off, her sister would say, "God bless them." And then someone else would cut them off and she'd go, "God bless them." And finally, my instructor said, "What the heck are you talking about? Why are you blessing these people? They're cutting me off. We're going to have an accident." And she goes, "Because they must have had something happen in their day, in their life that makes them drive in such a treacherous way. And we need to bless them." And that was a lesson decades ago that stuck with me because I thought, wow, that's so true, that we never know what's going on ahead of us or behind us. But if there's someone acting in a belligerent way, or a way that we don't expect, maybe we just need to bless them and give them grace because we don't know what's going on in their life. So I thought that was a good story to kind of replicate what you were talking about, because we never know what's going on, and we just have to accept that moment and be graceful for it.
I was out in the car earlier today with my mother, and this idiot. Because we're human beings, and coming in from a side road onto the dual carriageway we were on, and just came, it was just so fast, but he's on the inside of me. I couldn't pull into the outer lane because there was somebody in the outer lane.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother's reaction, and she said, she wanted to put a curse on him and all the rest of it. And I said, no. I said, no, I don't really want that type of talk in my car. Thank you very much indeed. We're all safe. And that's the important thing. Yes. I will have the odd little chunter, and then it's just like, release to the light with love.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's hard to do.
Oh, but I think it's, if we're allowed to, we allow ourselves to have that human reaction. We're not trying to stop ourselves from our humanness, but what we're trying to do here is take our power back from that energy. Mm-hmm. That's the sense I'm getting, is we can take, right, I've had that little chunter, now, okay, that's fine. Release to the light with love. Everybody's safe. That's okay.
Yes.
And now I can continue driving in the peace and the relaxation, etc. Have your humanness, but take yourself out of the aggression and the anger and those feelings, so that you can be relaxed and you're less likely to do what that idiot just did.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, because it causes stress, right? So it's like, I'm going to just bypass this, literally. But, even for me, I don't always have that positive approach. And I wanted to share this story because it's actually a sad story. And it's a story where I didn't shift perspective. And it ended up in a very sad situation. When I had cancer, I had a lifelong friend. I knew her since grade 1. And she had cancer 25 years earlier. But as I went through my journey, she phoned me every day, every second day. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How are things going? And she supported me throughout that whole journey. And then when I was, finishing all my treatments, she, I don't know what exactly happened, but she got really mad at me. And she said, your cancer journey was a cakewalk. She goes, my cancer journey was very difficult. And, that really hurt me. And I was quite upset about that. And I didn't talk to her for a while. And a couple of weeks ago, her brother phoned me and said, she's in the hospital. She's got days to live. And I rushed to see her, and I brought her a yellow rose. Yellow roses were her favorite. And, we just picked up where we left off. And I thought, she never dealt with her cancer, and I think it kind of ate her up alive. And I didn't have the grace to go, let's just carry on. Clearly, you need to talk about what you've been through because it really scarred her. But, that was an example of where I didn't have the grace and I didn't shift perspective. And luckily I got to see her before she passed. But that's an example of we don't always react in the way that we should. So for me, it was a lesson that, I try to be a perspective shifter, but sometimes I fail.
We're human. And that's okay. It's I don't really like using the word forgive ourselves, but we have to forgive ourselves. I did that. I can't take it back. We can't change it. And it's loving ourselves enough. And just maybe that was the gift she was giving you.
Exactly.
And it's trusting all of these things within our lives, that some of the hardest lessons are actually the biggest gifts.
Yes, very much so. And that's kind of how I took it. It's like, she has passed. She passed a couple weeks ago, but I take it as a gift that I knew her. And then I learned a lesson that sometimes it's not always, many times it's not all about us. It's about why, I wish that we would have had that talk and say, why did you say those things to me? What are you feeling that you had to hurt me? Instead of having hurt feelings and not speaking, which is, it's kind of childish in a way. It's like, how are we going to move forward if we're not talking about things? And you look at world events, and if we're not talking to our neighbors, how are we going to create world peace in different countries, right? So I think it is talking, it's working things out, it's asking those questions, that perspective shift of, why would you say that to me when you knew that I was struggling? Or, really trying to come to a consensus of how are you feeling, and how did you deal with your cancer, or whatever that challenge is. So it's talking, it's opening up kind of that dialogue and that conversation to understand each other better, whether it's a friend that I knew since grade 1, or a neighbor, or countries in the Middle East. Like, there's so much turmoil, but if we don't talk to each other and try to understand each other's position, we can talk about innovation and creativity all you want, but we need to start with a conversation and an open mind.
Oh, absolutely. And how many times do you hear it say, if somebody says something, it's up to us whether we take hurt from it.
Yes.
That's our choice. Or are we really listening to what they're saying? Because what's the saying? Hurt people hurt people. And she was brilliant. She was there for you. But something somewhere triggered in her. But at least you got to see her, and that was water under the bridge. And I think that's with everything. It's just like, it can be so easy when somebody says something to go, oh, but then it's okay. This is just the way I look at it. Did you mean what I heard? Not what you said. Because what I heard was my reaction to those words. However, the words you used and the tone of voice you used, and was there something else? Was there a misinterpretation? And so it's, did you mean what I heard? And then rephrasing it. And that becomes about a perspective shift, doesn't it?
Yes.
Is this actually truly being aimed at me, or because of something that's going on with them?
Exactly. And that's where, I can talk about perspective shifting, and some people think, oh, it's you're looking through the world through rose-colored glasses and oh, you're being naive. And it's not that at all. It's I choose to see the good. However, in this particular case, I failed. I was too sensitive. I let something go that I should have addressed. So I'm still learning, we're all still learning. And I think that's where the magic comes too. It's like realizing, oh, we wasted time not seeing each other because I was hurt, instead of addressing and shifting that perspective. So I wanted to give that example because this is not about rose-colored glasses and seeing the positive and having grace, because it's not always easy. So it's also looking at something that perhaps should have been more introspective about what was really happening in the background, and it's addressing that. And that's what I think, like I say, I think we all need to be sensitive about that. It's easy to be joyful when things are going great. When something happens and you're hurt or there's a tragedy, that's where perspective shift really needs to kick in, because it's easy to be joyful when things are smooth.
So share a little bit more about perspective shifts, because I know that you've got sort of a workbook that you've created, and you've got a download, shift perspective, that you've also got. Share a little bit about, I think, how you work with that, what people can potentially do to support themselves.
Yes. So for me, I again, I wrote this through the things that I've been through recently in the last couple of years, and I have felt that it's kind of, for me, it's 3 steps, and the first step is feeling with a compassionate heart, seeing with eyes wide open, and listening to that inner voice. And those sound kind of very poetic, but each step is quite difficult. And it's quite, you have to really dig deep to find it. And the first step is the hardest, feeling with a compassionate heart. Like say, when you're challenged with a difficult situation, it's easy to go to that dark side. It's easy to be angry, and it's easy to go, this isn't fair. But for me, I'm going to use my cancer diagnosis just because it's there and it's an easy one to talk about. Unfortunately, many of us have been touched by cancer in some way, shape, or form. But for me, it was being open-minded and go, okay, I can't control what's happened here, but I need to gain control of how I can deal with this. And that's where I really had to open up my heart and my mind and really think about how I can fix the situation or change it so that I can move forward in a positive way. Because you can be angry and you can go through this and be, sad and depressed. But for me, I chose to go through it fighting. And that's where kind of the badass came into. People look at me and go, Laura, you're not a badass, but we all have that inner badass. And I do think we need to tap into it when we need to. And for me, having cancer, I had to tap into that badass more than ever and really dig deep. And from there, it was, I talk about seeing with eyes wide open, because sometimes things aren't obvious, and sometimes they aren't always what they seem. And it's kind of metaphoric to see with eyes wide open, because I say sometimes I see the clearest when my eyes are shut. Sometimes the vision is just there, and it's just so much more clear when I can close my eyes and kind of shut out the noise. So I find that it is opening that heart and being vulnerable. Opening your heart as that step one is showing a vulnerability. And it is, people are going, oh, you have rose-colored glasses. It's not. It's being brave. Because when you show your vulnerable heart, you're kind of exposing yourself. And the world can be a cruel place. So I'm going to open up my heart, and I'm going to try to be the best person I can be. And that really is the first step. It is the most difficult, because you're kind of showing your vulnerability. Well, you are showing your vulnerability. But once you do that, it is seeing the world through a different lens. I'm a designer. People say, oh, you see it through an artist's lens. Well, no, my daughters are in business, my husband's in business, and they see things in a different way as well. Not as potentially an artist, but they're seeing things through their lens, through what they know, through what they want to know, through, through osmosis in many ways. So they're seeing it with eyes wide open. Having said that, sometimes closing your eyes and seeing things the clearest. And then finally, it really is listening to your inner voice. I just recently found I'm an empath. You know, when you're talking about, well, what was I like as a little girl? As a little girl, I felt things so immensely. I could feel the energy. I could feel things very strongly. And it bothered me because it was like, why can't I be like everybody else? Why do I feel this energy in this room, whether it was good, bad, or ugly? I didn't like that. And I resisted it. And now in my years of wisdom, I'm going, I need to embrace this. Being able to feel the energy of people and hear what's not being said and listen to perhaps the questions that aren't being answered, that's a gift. And now I see being an empath as a superpower. But up to this point, I was resisting it. I was like, I don't want to feel everything. I don't want to feel that energy. And now I take it as a gift because it is a special quality that now I embrace it. So, you know, perspective shifting to me is those 3 steps. It's opening that heart and being vulnerable, which is hard, but it is the first step. It's seeing with eyes wide open, sometimes when they're closed. And it's also listening to what's not being said. And I say, you know, sometimes the answer is in the silence. I think you've mentioned that too. Sometimes you just have to listen and the answer will come. But sometimes, most of the time, it's in the silence. It's listening to your soul. And again, being an empath, resisting it all these years, now I'm going, okay, now I need to meditate and really listen to what my soul is trying to tell me. And that's where, quite frankly, you know, I talk about going through cancer and going through Alberta Health Services and all the medical procedures. But after the medical procedures, AHS, who is the health services in Alberta, they're the ones that said, oh, we think you should join this. What it's called Wellspring. And it was this beautiful Eastern holistic medicine. And I was so impressed with how Western medicine was now embracing all the modalities of Eastern medicine to go, you know what? We've healed your body. Now let's heal your soul. Let's heal your mind. And you know what? That kind of sends a shiver down my spine going, I love where we're going. These Eastern modalities are becoming more and more commonplace. So I've learned I did yoga a little bit when I was younger, but now visualization, meditation, tapping. I know you do Reiki. It's like, wow, there's so many beautiful gifts that are out there that will help us with our soul and our heart. And I think that's part of what my perspective shift has been about.
Oh, I love all of that. And I'm one of these people that if I'm getting a sense of something, but I'm not 100% certain, I get my dowsing pendulum out.
Wow.
And I know that it works because several years ago I had a stand at a Mind Body Spirit fair, and a young girl had come in with her mother. The mother had gone off for a reading or something, and the little girl was looking at, and I'd got dowsing pendulums and crystals and bits, as well as doing the tasters of Reiki. And I was talking to her, and she was meant to be going to a class that afternoon. It was a Saturday, I think. And so I'd found out what her name was, and I'd said to her, okay. I said, so what class are you going to? And I was showing her how the pendulum worked. What was a yes? What was a no? And I said, does she enjoy the class? And the pendulum went no. And I looked at her and she said, no, I don't. So I am actually very content to listen. I tend to ask 3 questions. If it's a yes with one part of the question, there might be a no with the other part of the question. It's giving me the same answer. It's just asked in a different way.
Yes.
And it's just like, but I can body douse, so I can actually ask my body. Because if I haven't got the pendulum with me, but then my body rocks forward for yes and it goes backwards for no. So just make sure you don't fall over.
Wow.
It's listening. It's back to that listening.
Yes.
And there are so many things that we can do to listen. It's usually 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm lying awake.
Yes.
Now, can you make sure I know that when it comes to actually being downstairs? Write it down. It always disappears. And it's just like, but it's trust. We have a connection, a much higher connection. And that support is there. All we've got to do is ask.
I agree. I completely agree. And just to tell one final story, when I was going through my cancer, I was, my hair was really important to me. And people say it's just hair. Hair was such a big part of who I was. I'd walk into a room, people would comment. It was a big deal, my hair. So when I went through, started chemo, I was really worried about my hair falling out. It was in, it's almost 4 years now. It was in May, and I was going to plant my flowers on the deck because I needed to plant my flowers and watch them grow as I was going through chemo. So I was outside. My hair, I had just started chemo. I was planting my flowers out in the deck. It was a beautiful May day. It was a Sunday, I think. And there was a light breeze. I was planting these flowers, and, you know, I could hear the kids in the playground down the street. I could hear the dogs barking. I could hear the birds singing. And the breeze was taking my strands, just a few strands of my hair. And I thought, okay, it's starting. And the flowers were almost like grabbing my hair. The petals were like arms almost, and they were grabbing strands of my hair. And I thought, they're not blowing away. They're sticking in these flowers that I'm planting. And for some reason, and I don't know where it came from, but it was a higher power, something deep in my soul that said, I saw these flowers or these strands of hair, and I just hope that the birds that were singing, you know, auditory, all your senses become very sensitive. But I heard the birds singing, and I hoped that they would come and take these strands of hair and put them in their nests for their eggs and their babies. And I thought, that way I won't lose my hair in vain. There's going to be a purpose to my hair loss. And I don't know why I felt that or why I thought that way, but to me, that was a pivotal moment in, again, perspective shifting. It was like, I can sit here and cry about my hair falling out, or I can go, I hope that someone will take my hair, being the birds, hopefully, and putting it in their nest and lining it for their babies. And that somehow made it so much easier to deal with. So again, it was a story in perspective shifting that kind of stuck with me, and you know, it was pivotal in my life.
And it's just that is that having that acceptance that there is more to a story, more to an experience than we necessarily understand at that point in time. We're coming close to the end of the program. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to add before we actually close?
You know, for me, I think it is really important to realize that things aren't always as they seem. And in this world full of turmoil, I think being a perspective shifter and having an open mind and listening to your soul and everything that's going around, and being accepting of other people and differences and coming together, I think that's really what I would like to emphasize. I think, you know, I recently wrote a blog called Leading from the Back of the Room. I'm not a great leader. I have a virtual team, but we are all leaders in our own way. And I think just opening the door for the person behind you and letting them in, or letting that person in the traffic and waving him through. Let's lead with kindness. I think being a perspective shifter has taught me that I just want to lead with kindness. And I think the world needs this. We've always had a volatile world. I grew up in the 60s with, you know, a lot of social unrest, a lot of political unrest. It was a crazy time, and I can't say it's any better now. It's just different. So I think we just need to change, and we need to lead with kindness. So that's kind of what I would like to leave it with.
Bless you. Absolutely. It sort of, is it change or is it growth? Maybe it's a bit of both. Oh, Laura, and I've just put your websites, both of them, into the chat, and I will make sure that they are. So if you're watching this, folks, on the YouTube video, if you would like to learn more about Laura and her work, and is the right, that's the link to, it's on that the link to your download, the Shift Perspective. That yes. is on your Laura Ballerini website.
Yes, and there's a link at the top saying Shift Perspective, and there's a form that you could fill out and download the document. And I've also got a workbook that I think I'm going to put up there as well, because the workbook just has questions that you can ask and kind of work through each of the 3 steps. And I think it's helpful.
Bless you. Thank you. I'll make sure that that's underneath the video on YouTube as well. So folks, anything here that's resonated with you, if you'd like to learn more about Laura and her work, please check out the websites. We're here to share the gifts of our own experiences. And that's exactly what Laura is doing. And that's why I love having guests, because it actually brings all of this sort of about, and it helps make this happen. To support each and every one of you that watches. And I know that whoever needs to will see this when it's right for them. So thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you, Sara Jane.
We've got a today's conversation for you next week. Capacity Leadership with Sonia Liddell. So I hope that you'll think about joining us for that. We have great conversations. Sort of there's 4 of us that will be in that conversation. So hopefully you'll join us for that. Laura, thank you. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Stay well. Namaste, sweet souls. Bye.
Bye.